So, hi. This month's topic is about embracing self-care. And today's talk title is Balancing Grief and Joy. And I thought, well, that's so appropriate, because that's what I've been doing the last 10 months, it seems like. And I was reminding a ministerial graduate that I was in school with this morning on my way up here. I said, remember whenever we were taking a class, and whatever the class topic was about, that would be happening in our life? I said, that's happening with these talks too. This is funny how the universe works. So, because the topic is balancing grief and joy, it's brought up the grief that I'm experiencing about the loss of my father this year. But I just wanted to share this Canadian mental health definition of grief as opposed to mourning. So they say that grief is what we think and feel on the inside when somebody we love dies. That could be fear, loneliness, panic, pain, yearning, anxiety, or emptiness. Mourning, on the other hand, is our outward expression of our grief, like crying, journaling, music, poetry, or talking about it. So those are the differences between grief and mourning. And, we all experience grief because we're human beings and it's part of our human experience. It's not something that we can escape from. As long as we're capable of loving, we will experience grief in our lifetime. But one of the things about mourning is in our society, there might be some ways that we were conditioned that make us feel uncomfortable about mourning in public, especially for our men in our society who may have been taught not to cry, or it's not manly to show your feelings. And so some of us may feel uncomfortable sharing our feelings because of the way we were conditioned in our society. And there's something that's really important to know, that although we all experience grief, we can't heal from it unless we actually mourn. Allow ourselves to mourn. Sometimes we're so afraid to experience grief to the max because it just feels too painful. We're afraid that we can't handle all that pain. But I just want to remind us that we're whole, complete, and perfect human beings, and that we have everything within us to get through the hard times. So one of the things some of us do is not to feel is to take drugs or drink too much, or even just something simple like getting too busy. We do that to ourselves so that we don't have to feel. And there's something really wonderful about grief if we take the time to be with it, sit with it, and feel into it. We can ask the question, what is grief trying to teach me here? What is the gift in this? Sometimes we can see that, this is a wonderful opportunity for me to experience something new and greater. Like if I hadn't just had that loss, right, there wouldn't be a void for the universe to come in and fill it with something wonderful. But there is a warning. They should put a warning label on grief. Because we can fall into grief so deeply that we can get kind of stuck there, right? And I don't know about you, but just giving this example of my father passing, I think I'm really good at embracing whatever feeling I'm having to the max. So I was staying with my mother. I flew from Oregon, came down and was staying with my mother, and I was grieving and I was mourning. I was doing the best I could to embrace the pain and express that outwardly. Well, I don't think my mother had ever seen me actually mourn. I started thinking about that. In my family of origin, we didn't share, we didn't have communication, we didn't share our feelings, so it was pretty not that healthy. For me, that was my experience. And so later I found out that she told my cousin that I wasn't doing well. And I thought, well, that's weird, because I thought I was doing really well. That's what grief and mourning look like, right? So it's really important that I know for myself that whenever I'm experiencing a so-called uncomfortable feeling, that I embrace it wholly, because it's part of who we are, right? And grief, I learned, will never go away. As human beings, we'll always have grief in our life as long as we can love. And so sometimes we have this idea that, oh my gosh, I'm grieving, I need to do whatever it is, whatever it takes to get rid of it, right? It just doesn't work that way. Sorry to break the news, right? We know that. It's still there inside, and it might pop up at strange times. We just never know. We might hear a song and start crying because it reminds us of that. But actually, one of the things that happened for me is that I ended up getting my father's pickup. And it had his CDs in it, and I turned on the radio. And he had been listening to this, the song, which I can't even remember the name of it, but it was all in Spanish. And so every time I went somewhere in my dad's truck, I just turned it on and just loved it. Right? And coming up here, I was listening to another one of my dad's CDs. And it was like the Peruvian flute players, right? It's really beautiful. And so, the talk title, Balancing Grief and Joy. So how do we do that? How do we balance grief with joy when we're feeling so overcome with grief? Wondering, will we ever experience joy again? Whew. Well, it's important to remember that joy is inside of us, right? We have that aspect of God inside of us all the time. And so we can remind ourselves, yes, this is a human experience, and how can I give myself some self-love and care by offering myself an opportunity to experience joy? And so we can just think of those things. What do we love to do? What are the things that put a smile on our face, right? One of the things I love to do is just to be in nature, go for a walk in nature. So I feel very close to God there. Maybe do some yoga or go swimming in the river or walking on the beach. So it's the reason why they brought this topic up is because we don't want to get stuck in grief, because our minds can go to an unhealthy place. Have you had the experience of, I coulda, shoulda, woulda, I wish I hadn't, or I wish I had? Yeah. If only I had said this, and if I wish I hadn't have said that, right? Those things pop up for me sometimes. If only I knew that was the last conversation I was going to have with my father, I would have done it differently. And then I have to rein my thoughts in. And that's our spiritual practice, to rein our thoughts in. Because as religious scientists, we know that our thoughts are really powerful. And they can take us to a really deep, dark place if we allow them to. And so I reminded myself that so grateful my dad went the way he did. He just went out just like that. Talked to him that night, and he was gone a few hours later. And I look at many of my friends whose parents just held on for so long, and they were in the dying process for so long. And I see them just go through the challenges with that, of our parents getting older, or whoever. Maybe somebody we know had a stroke, right? And there's just these physiological things that could have happened to my father that would have just been so much harder. And so I remind myself to not think that way. Don't go there, Julia. Everything happens in divine right order, right? So in this philosophy, we have the tagline from our quote from Ernest Holmes that says, change your thinking, change your life, right? So in this philosophy, we've had a tendency maybe in the past. I think nowadays we're getting a lot better at not doing this, which is called a spiritual bypass. Part of the thing that we know is that our thoughts are powerful. And so we can feel tempted when we're feeling pain or grief to just change our thinking about it so that we don't have to go through the feelings, so we don't have to mourn. Because I can say, you know what, it's all good. No problem. It's all good, right? It's called a spiritual bypass. So that's similar to like doing drugs or drinking or getting too busy. It's keeping my human experience from going through the mourning process. In order for us to live fully as human beings, or I should say as spiritual beings having a human experience, we really need to allow ourselves to actually feel all the human feelings and to know that it's okay. It is going to be okay because we have everything within us to get through it. And guess what? We don't have to do it alone. What are some things or ways that we can support ourselves when we go through these challenging times? Maybe beef up our spiritual practice, or make some phone calls to a friend or friends. Gratefully, we have a spiritual community. We can come and be with one another. We don't have to do it alone. So I just want to throw out there, to think about things that you can do. And it doesn't have to be a death of a loved one. Every time something changes in our life, there's a loss. It could be a little loss, or it could be the loss of a job, or the loss of a home, right? Those are losses, and those are major life losses. So we experience grief when we have those losses. And just honor ourselves and recognize that as a community, we're going through a transition. We had the pandemic. We've had a huge loss in attendance. Some of us are grieving that. It's not easy. And we don't know what's going to happen. But one of the blessings that happened was that we learned how to use technology, right? And some of us still would rather be here in person, but some of us would rather be in our pajamas. I get that. That's what I did. I put on the top, but I had my pajamas on the bottom. So we got conditioned to do something different. We got conditioned to stay at home. We got conditioned to utilize technology. So there's a shift, right? So some of us are showing up here in person, and yet we're sad that people aren't here in person, or more people aren't here in person, right? It's the thing. Everything changed. Everything changed. So it's never going to be like it was, right? But it can be something new and greater. And we have the opportunity to brainstorm. If you haven't signed up for the brainstorming dinner at Madeline and Gary's, the sign-up sheet is over there. So brainstorm what ministry could look like until we get a new senior minister, if that's what's going to happen. Because we don't know what's going to happen, right? But we can take a step right, in the direction that we want to go, and just do the next step and the next step and the next step. And you know what? One step at a time, one day at a time, always works. We can't know what's going to happen, but today I can do this, and tomorrow I'll know the next thing to do. And it just unfolds. Life just unfolds beautifully. That's the way it works, I'm telling you. So we don't have to worry, all right? Just let go of the worry, if you can. I invite you to let go of any worries or concerns, because God's got this. This center is God in form as a community. God's got our back and our front and our top and our bottom. We're in God. So there's nothing lacking. Everything has already been given us, everything we need. And so by the power of our thought and our word, we are co-creating that next new beautiful thing. So, it seems like there was something else I was going to say, but it's been I know what it was. When I said that everything changed, right? Everything changed. It reminded me of when my dad died. My whole life changed just overnight. Everything changed. I mean, I don't even know if I can. I've tried to explain what that felt, and some of you probably know what it felt like, but I had never experienced the loss of a parent, so I had no idea what it was going to be like. It was so deep. It was a mystical experience for me. It felt like the energy that makes up who I am on a cellular level, but really on an energetic, spiritual level, shifted. And it felt physiological, too. It was like my father brought me into the world, right? That seed that was planted it's so deep inside of me that helped create me. It was so amazing. I mean, I still am amazed when I think about it. I had no idea I could have that experience. So there's a gift. Gift in the grief. And one of the things that Dad did when he died, I really feel like this is what happened, was he actually picked me up off of my current path and placed me on my ministerial path. That was the gift Dad gave me. Because I realized suddenly that, well, I didn't have time to plan my dad's celebration of life and work full time and be his executor of the estate. And so I requested that I work part-time so that I could make room for my ministry. And I had been struggling with that decision for probably a half a year. So Dad did that for me. Picked me up, set me on my ministerial path in a way that I needed. I needed that. I just couldn't get off the fence about it. So there is that opportunity for us to ask the question, what is the gift in this? What can I learn from this process I'm going through? Like perhaps you can remember a time when somebody broke up with you. Maybe. I had so many people break up with me. Who in the world would want to break up with me? Right? But at the time, I felt like I was like defective or something. Like, why would somebody break up with me? Is there something wrong with me? Right? That nobody wants to be with me? Now, I'm happily single, just so you know. But that's one of the places my mind would go, right? So instead of thinking that way, I started thinking like, wow, I could do something totally different now, right? I'm free. I can create something new and beautiful. which is something I love to do. It's what fulfills my life, is to participate in activities where I can create something new and beautiful in all kinds of areas. Build a house, get another relationship, whatever. So there's always those gifts. So I just want to remind us that. I think I really want to thank you all for being my spiritual community. I call you mine because I feel like you are. You're my spiritual family. We've been together, some of us, for 20 years or more, right? And I want to thank you for the love. I appreciate who you are, that you love me through my grief and my mourning. And I'm here to do that for you too. We're all in this together. We do not have to go through it alone. Just remember that. And I want to leave you with a quote. On one of these cards is a quote. I think, or I could have left it up in the office. Oh, here it is, the quote. I'll leave you with the quote. This is by Nancy Burns. There is freedom knowing you can carry grief and joy. So it is.